Hello, MTI members. I am Tom Morrison right here from the home office of the Metal Treating Institute. We're here for another edition of Heat Treat Live, and we're excited to be talking about heat treat specifications and its impact on your company and your quality. We've got three panelists with us that you have all met before. We're going to get to them in a moment. But what I'd like to do is really quick give you a couple of happenings that's going on with MTI. The MTI Board of Directors just returned from its annual winter meeting where we did the revamp of the strategic plan. Lots of great things came out of that meeting that we'll be reporting on in the next couple of months, so stay tuned. Our audit database, if you're Nadcap certified and you're not getting your audit findings into the database, you should do that as soon as you can. People are inputting their audit findings, and if you give and put in audits, which are all confidential, no one can see your data. You can only see it yourself, but everybody sees a compiled version of all the audits findings out there. And right now we got about 100 findings in there. And as you put yours in, you'll be able to immediately see audits from around the country and see what's happening in those audits. So get in, go to MTI's website, heattreat.net, and roll down on the right. You'll see it says affiliated websites. And there's a link to the audit database that you can click in there. It's very easy to use. People have given us really compliments on how easy it is to put your audits in and view them. And then at the February Nadcap meeting coming up here, February 18th to the 21st, MTI is going to be hosting a special meeting from 2:30 to 4. It's a closed-door meeting of all MTI members to just talk about, from a technical perspective, how do you comply with the audits that Nadcap's putting through with the checklist. And then if we have enough findings available, we're going to be going over and reviewing some of the findings that have come out of the audit database. So I'll be sending out another link to where you can RSVP for that meeting. So if you're attending the February Nadcap meeting in New Orleans, you're going to want to go to that meeting as well as our Tuesday night reception that we always have to help in a low-key format talk about the issues that are bogging you down in your audits. So don't miss that. And then our spring meeting, which is April 25th to the 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Florida. The hotel room block opened today. I opened last week. It's already 50% sold out. This is going to be a hot meeting that you're going to definitely want to come to. Lots of great content, great keynote speakers, and you're going to want to be there because it's going to tell you the latest things you need to know. And one thing that's going to be talked about is Kenneth Grombach talks about the emerging manufacturing boom that's going to happen in the economy the next 15 to 20 years. He's got lots of great data that kind of disputes all the things you see on the craziness of TV. So you want to come out and hear that hope that we're going to have for the future in the world of manufacturing and the economy. But right now, we're here to talk about technical specifications with three incredibly involved members in all these committees. And I want to just throw it to each of you to introduce yourselves real short time. So Ed, let's start with you.
Ed Engelhard, Vice President Corporate Quality with Solar Atmospheres.
Robert?
Robert Peters, I'm a consultant in the heat treating industry.
And Mr. Bob?
Bob Ferry, I'm Vice President of Engineering and Quality at FPM Heat Treating.
So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, MTI members. If you would like, on your right-hand side of your screen, you'll look down right over here. There's a small place you can hit chat. If you hover on the bottom of this screen, you can see the word chat. You click that, a chat box pops up to the right, and you can click in there. And as you listen to any of this commentary, you can ask questions or post a posting. If you hear something you know an answer to, you can do that. But we'd really like to engage you in the conversation if you can. So let's all start with CQI 9. Bob Ferry, I know is it revision 4?
It is.
So revision 4, what is the hot and heavy impact and things going on with revision 4 of CQI 9?
Okay, so revision 4 keeps it's plugging along here. We're continuing to work on the process tables. We've gotten through that main assessment. However, it's the process tables that have all the details and the requirements for running each process. For example, whether you're doing through hardening, carburizing, carbonitriding, or even going into ion nitriding, and they're expanding all of these process tables. So right now we have finished up with the low pressure carburizing process table. That's process table F. And I think there was maybe one other item on there that we're going to be wrapping up at the next meeting. But for the most part, the changes to that are going to be more in regards to the changes in the types of equipment that are available to do low pressure carburizing. And they're going to have specific requirements for each one of those furnaces. So if it's a single chamber or whether it's a multi-chamber or a multi-cell furnace, they're going to have different requirements, for example, for leak up rates. And, they're still looking at quench delay capturing quench delay times and those kind of things. So those are the changes that are going on in process table F. And surprisingly, AMS 2769 is being rewritten as well. And they're separating out the different types of furnaces, all these furnace models, in order to make sure that they're capturing all the requirements for each specific furnace type as well. So we seem to be like in lockstep, although we're two separate committees. Process table H, ion nitriding, that one's completed. And the next one that we're working on is process table G, which is going to be sinter hardening. There's only a couple more to go. So, we're hopeful that this thing is going to be wrapped up this year. So we'll see.
So you might, now what is the timetable when it's wrapped up, it's done? What are the timetable heat treaters have to get themselves in gear?
Typically, they're going to give you like 6 months to get this thing incorporated into your system before you're audited to the new specification once it's released. Okay, so we'll have to see. Once it gets wrapped up, it's got to go to the management council,
right?
And they have to take a look at it. And if they approve all the changes, then they can move forward with releasing it.
So I'm interested to understand from you. You're at these meetings. You're doing a lot with them, and we appreciate your efforts there. I know I get to sit in the AMEC committee on the aerospace side because I attend those meetings. So when you look at additive manufacturing and just changes in emerging technologies and the big picture things, how well is the group overseeing CQI-9 tuned into those things?
They obviously use additive manufacturing for certainly making models of parts or individual pieces, but they haven't gotten into a full-fledged high volume production standpoint on any kind of additive manufacturing process for making the parts that they have to make. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when automotive makes a part, they make a lot of them.
Right.
And so it's got to be economically feasible if you're competing against CNC machines and stamping presses or fine blanking presses. That equipment is pretty efficient. So we'll see where this goes. Certainly they are paying attention, and waiting to see what comes out from the other committees as far as specifications go. And I'm sure that'll be incorporated into the CQI-9 at some point.
So do you see anything going on, last question for that, do you see anything going on in the world of that spec that you look at a heat treater and say, well, you need to be prepared for this because it's going to increase? The one thing I look at when specs change, is it going to require us to buy new equipment, increase costs in any way? Any of that going on?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, they are talking about making sure that they want to see people upgrading their controls on their equipment. Mm-hmm. A lot of it has to do, a lot of us are using furnaces that have been refurbished or rebuilt or upgraded. So they're expecting that you're handling that end to control the temperature of the equipment and the atmosphere. However, they want to see digital chart recorders, and they want to see objective evidence of the cycles that ran. So, they're trying to phase out all the analog equipment and insist on going to all digitals without coming out in the spec and literally saying it, but they're incorporating it based on the requirements that if you have an analog recorder, then you have a lot more frequent checks and balances that you have to put on that as opposed to a digital system.
So my big question when I hear that is digital industry 4.0 is the connection. Do you hear anything, Bob, in a way that, a self-audit, because I know CQI-9 self-audit, where the OEMs are going to say, hey, we want to tap into your furnace data and watch and get access to that data? That, for me, that'd be a big question.
Well, they haven't asked to physically tap in from off-site. However, we do have to show them when they come in and they do an audit. We do show them the digital traces on their parts that we had to process. So we can drill in through our shop order system into our digital chart recorders and show them what all the digital traces are and how it ran the cycle that that we anticipated.
Right. Now, Rick Cliff, one of our great members in Canada, we are worldwide on this program, by the way. Canada, Rick brings us worldwide. How you doing, Rick? So he asked a great question, and I'm going to give the answer that I've heard, and then you tell me if there's anything else about it. Excuse me, but is CQI9 AIAG given any thought to going from self-assessment to a second or third-party audit like Nadcap? And what I've heard is they're not interested in that, but that's been a couple of years ago when they were tossing that around. What is your thoughts? Do you hear anything?
I have, but I'm on this committee, so I'm not. This would be done at the management council level,
right?
However, what I do know is that the management council was approached by a couple outside or independent auditing bodies. Just to do exactly that, because they wanted to create this this whole program of them doing self-assessments, right? But
yeah.
You're right. Yeah, there's a little dollar sign attached to that. And to be quite honest, the CQI9 members, member companies, they don't want to. They really like the control that they have right now, and
right.
Even though you have a general CQI9, you'll find that there are some of these companies that have their own requirements on top of what's been agreed to with CQI9. So they want to make sure that you're operating under their requirements, all of them, including CQI9 and any other ancillary requirements, and they don't want to give that up. So they weren't able to come to any kind of agreement that I know of to have that happen. So it's still right now a self-assessment until your customer comes in and they want to go through that with you.
Right. Well, that kind of sounds like Nadcap. Nadcap was formed so that they wouldn't have to do those, but they've never really given up that control. So I think it's kind of the same notion. Well, I think it was about 3 years ago that I actually, a member asked at a Midwest chapter meeting that very thing. And I went back to AI. I called them up specifically and asked them, and they said point blank, our OEMs are very satisfied with the current operation that we do and not interested in self-assessments. But I mean, in outsourcing that assessment process. But hey, technology and markets change, and who knows, but it's always good to keep asking the question.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's shift gears to AMEC 2759, Mr. Peters with the AMEC committee and all the slash specs. So tell us what is going on there. I know we're on the verge of all that stuff being rolled out and published, and we'll talk about some seminars MTI is putting together, but what's going on with the slash specs of 2759?
Well, with 2759, the basic spec, there were a couple of small changes made, and now it's out for voting. And hopefully we will know next week the status of that. /1, that one out for voting, and should know the outcome of that one next week as well. /2, we added sub-zero cooling as part of the quenching process. Temper time starts after Cyro deep freezing, okay? So there was a big debate over that, so we changed the wording on that, and that'll go back out for balloting. All right. Let's see. Then we've got /3. That went out for the 28-day balloting. And 5 went out for 28-day balloting, which is corrosion-resistant steel. 7, carburizing and heat treating of steel parts. That was dealing with PyroWare, 675. So we added some comments about that and snap tempering, and then that went out to ballot. And then as a comment earlier about 2769, that went out for the 28-day balloting as well. So then we talked about hipping and some of the T comments that were made during the vote. And that'll be addressed in a week at the next meeting. And in titanium, 2801, we had some discussions on that and some T comments, and then that went back out for balloting. And then AMEC 18AA, the heat treatment of raw steel, some T comments were reviewed, changed some of the wording regarding parts, is debate on parts or raw material, wording on that. and soak time. So that one, a bunch of changes were made too. And then there were some brief comments about ASTM E18 and E10, the portable hardness testers. And as we've all discussed a little earlier, that is open, but hopefully there'll be some closure here in the next month or so. Then there were some brief comments about 2753 on salt bath for nitrocarburizing, and that went to Committee B, and they are working on that, so I don't have any updates on Committee B yet. Any other questions?
Yeah, Steve Bradican out on the West Coast was asking, didn't Slash 3 become live in January 2019? Question on it. For rework, they stated that re-aging times at a temperature are maximums and not a time and then set to a tolerance. Is this how you interpret it?
Ooh, yes. But, you know, as we all know, there's a little gray there, but yes.
Okay. So when are we expecting, I know we talked on the pre-call before this about maybe the end of March. Are we still expecting, could everyone expect, if everything goes right, that by the end of March, all these will be published and approved?
I would say the odds are pretty good. That is a good statement. By the end of March, we should have the specs out for purchasing. But here again, you know, the committees above AMEC, they all have their 2 cents to throw in there. But it looks like we're making a lot of progress. And I'm going to say March sounds good.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because the members that are listening, what we're planning to do, we talked about it before we got on this call, is we're already putting in the stage a first week or second week in May program in Dallas, where it'll be a day and a half, where you'll be able to come in with your quality manager, your quality team, and listen to a series of speakers who's going to tell you all the things that you need to know to comply with the new specs for your Nadcap audits for 2759 and everything going on with that. So be on the lookout for those details. Our goal is to help give you the information you need to really close that gap of knowledge that you'll have when it comes to the specs.
Yes.
So looking forward to that. So, okay, well, and then I'll give a little update, Robert, on the 1962, ARP 1962. We did a pretty good sweep of changes in ARP 1962 when it comes to the training ARP, and that has actually gone through the entire process and is at Committee B, which is the last stop, from my understanding, for it to be approved. Yes. And we're hoping by this meeting or the next meeting in April in Phoenix that it will be fully approved, and we'll be able to turn that out to members. But a lot of things with having MTI's online academy accepted as adequate training, knocking down the time you have to train someone from 24 months to 12 months, from 18 months to 6. People felt with technology and the generation of today that it really doesn't take that long to train somebody on a lot of those different processes. So sweep those down, and then gave some great tables in there that'll help you construct your training. So some really good changes in there that you'll want to pay attention to as we launch that out. Right. And the other thing, Tom, is on 2750, that's going out to balloting. It's this month. That's being balloted. Well, you just led right into my next topic, because at the MTI board meeting, we had a pretty significant discussion on 2750. And so can you give and Bob Ferry, if you can maybe chime in from what you heard, but we heard that there's some things in there that give people some real big concerns. They weren't talked about specifically, but I mean, Robert, can you give people a sense of what 2750 is going on there, where it is in the process? Well, I have to be careful here, gentlemen, because it's up for balloting, and there were a lot of discussions on the calibration, on the thermocouples and location, all right? And the computerized version versus the old-fashioned recording. So it's kind of, we're making some progress, but pyrometry is really an open book of all the types of heat treating that goes on. And now with the 3D printing world coming into this, you know, I can see we're going to have more changes to be made here in the near future as well. Right. I know that doesn't really clarify a lot of things, but it's about the best I can do at this point. Well, Andrew Bassett just shared with us. I know he's on the committee, he's watching, and he just told us that they closed on the 11th of January, and they'll be dealing with those comments next week. So, we'll definitely look forward to hearing what's going on there. Awesome. Well, now let's shift, because what happens at AMEC leads itself. It's just like they say, the football championships lead themselves through New England, right, guys? Don't know how that happened. So all AMEC
No comment.
all things AMEC lend itself through NADCAP eventually. So Ed, what is happening with NADCAP that you feel everybody needs to be paying attention to? I know with all these changes, it leads to checklist changes. And is there anything happening right now that we need to be talking about?
Well, we tried to, as suppliers, tried to have a discussion about the changes that had happened last year in the 2759 series, but they were unwilling to have that opened up at the meeting and instead deferred commentary to AMEC. But the result of that was the NADCAP Heat Treat Task Group has put together a sub-team of suppliers, primes, and PRI staff to start looking at the 7102 checklist and scrub it down, maybe reorganize it a little bit, and make sure that it really does line up with the changes that are occurring in the 2759 series of documents. When 2750F hits the street, we'll probably have to do the same thing on the 7102/8 pyrometry checklist. So anything you folks can do in the AMEC world to keep things reasonable, we'd certainly appreciate, because otherwise it's going to be this long process of fixing things the way they stand right now.
Great.
But everybody in NADCAP is following all this news from AMEC very closely because it's a direct impact to their businesses, and they just want to make sure that when auditors show up and criteria is put in front of them, that it accurately reflects the standard.
Anything from you, Robert, on that, or Bob?
Oh, I agree.
Well, I can see a lot of, the checklists are going to have to be modified to cover some of the requirements that they're looking at. And I know, Ed, you were piping up about that even at the last meeting, the last NADCAP meeting. So certainly that's going to be coming down the pipe as soon as all of these 2759/specs get released. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Certainly, on that AMS 2750, the first go around was kind of scary. After we got to see it, and unfortunately they didn't identify any of the changes in the spec, although it looks so. You have to go through it line by line to make sure that you're capturing everything. And it's like the old one. I mean, you read that thing 10 times and you keep coming up with stuff that you didn't pick up the last time, right? So I think this was going to be the same way.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes out. But I know there were a lot of technical comments that went back through the ballot. And I think, that's a help. Andrew, please help us with this. I know you're on that committee. So, stay in there for heat treaters, okay?
Well, I think what's important about that too is having I know Robert is working on 2759. When we go to the May meeting, when we have the quality, we're trying to work on a document that you'll have 2759 old and 2759 new with specific markings, so you know exactly what changed. You don't have to reread the entire thing to find it. You'll be able to see word for word what things changed in the spec from one to the other.
That'd be an awesome help for any heat treater that's been dealing with AMS 2759 at this point.
Well, I think Andrew just showed us that we're probably going to have a 1-week AMEC meeting, because he just displayed that there's 174 technical comments on 2750, and they got to address every single one of them. So, Andrew, you're going to be there for a couple of days, man. Well, good. So let's shift now to ASTM, and I know there's just a couple issues there. I know, Ed, you've been involved in the new E20 committee and the whole direct verification with E18 and E10. So how's all that shaping out?
E10 and E18 were closed out and have been issued late last year. I think they're going to be stable for a while. The matter of direct verification was sort of a sidebar that came out of all the discussion around portable hardness testing for testers that might be have the ability to be verified directly. And then Doug Mattson brought that all back to the heat treat task group, and so he pretty much stirred the pot on everybody having their paperwork for direct verification in line. And now it's even spilled over into the MTL task group at Nadcap, where they're trying to decide how strictly they're going to enforce all that. In the meantime, as I said before, E10 and E18 are pretty stable as they stand. And at the last meeting in November, the Sam Lowe said that they would move on to E110, which is the portable hardness testers by indentation or impression that are not verifiable directly. So they need to get that lined up a little better with the new language in E10 and E18, and it'll probably take them the better part of 3 or 4 meetings to finalize that. So as those develop, I'm sure we'll be bringing information back to the membership in these little webinars to let them know just what's going on there. At the moment, it's fairly quiet. There is a thermometer, temperature measurement subcommittee that I subscribe to get the minutes and agendas. I have not been able to attend those meetings because they've corresponded to the E28 meetings on indentation testing. So hopefully future meetings I'll be able to sit down on those and bring back some information about what's happening there.
Okay, awesome. Anything from you, Robert Peters?
No, I guess one comment I'll make is we're trying very hard to get these AMS specs out there. And if you're on the committee, please vote. You know, that's important.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Read, understand, and vote. Well, the next thing with ASTM is I know changing technology. My question to all these committees is, are they paying attention to the fast-changing technologies that are out there, like additive manufacturing? I mean, that's material processes and changes are happening fast, technology. And I've got the notice right here from ASTM where they've just formed an additive manufacturing council that is going to have 9 subcommittees where they're going to be digging into how these are going to impact aviation, construction, consumer electronics, maritime, medical and biological, oil and gas, space flight, and transportation heavy machinery. So this is just on the front stages, and I would encourage anybody watching this that has anybody involved with ASTM, or if you're on any one of those 9 industries, that you seek to have someone in your quality department involved in those things. That's one of the powerful things MTI has done the last 12 months. Wouldn't you say, Bob Ferry, as we've been able to engage members who are attending these meetings to have a bigger voice and weigh in more? We've had more people volunteering to go to ASTM, AMEC, and Nadcap meetings than ever before, just so we can have our voice heard. So, Robert, I know you've been involved with the SAE additive manufacturing side. I mean, anything going on there in that realm?
Yes, we're writing all the specs, I'm going to say it from A to Z, about additive manufacturing. And the metals right now is titanium and stainless steel and aluminum. And a lot of specs are being written. GE is throwing in a lot of information from their aspect. I will say that aerospace is taking off and running with this, as well as the medical industry. Automotive, Ford and Chrysler have jumped on it. They're now paying a lot of attention to the 3D printing world. Okay, I can't say so much for the other auto manufacturers yet, but it'll happen. But these specifications that are being written, I mean, this is the first time it's being done in an organization. So there's always going to be changes out there. And
right.
To the comments about the ASTM group, you know, there'll be some good feedback and information coming from them to help us in writing these specifications as well. But it is a industry that is going to take off and run. It's not going to walk.
Right. Well, and you would say it's been great having members involved, wouldn't you, at the level they have
Yes.
been? So I think one of the things that people need to be really cautious of on the additive manufacturing is, I mean, I study this stuff like crazy because people ask me about it a lot, but it's imperative that you're asking your customers what is their plans for additive manufacturing, or that they see it being a wave in their production process. Because when I went to the Moog Aerospace plant, I think I told the story last time, but it's worth repeating. He said they have one component that's made up of 75 different parts that get machined and heat treated over time to become that one component. And what he said additive manufacturing does for them is it lets them print that one component as one piece, one part. So that 75 different components that's now are not going outside for heat treating, not going outside for machining, but it's just one part. And I asked him, if that's the case, would you ever consider heat treating a part in-house, because now you only have one piece to manage? And he says that's part of the discussion. So I think every heat treater should be talking to their OEM manufacturing customer and asking them, what are you doing in the world of additive manufacturing? Because if they decide to bring it in a large way, then that potentially could lower it's not the amount of heat treating per part, but it could take the amount of parts that's being shipped out and make one part out of it. So you just need to be aware and ask those right questions to get that done, because additive manufacturing is our Uber, in my opinion, in the heat treating world. It could have a big effect. And you also want to stay abreast of, if you're in the automotive world, stay abreast and read everything you can on how ride sharing, mobile transfer is going to be impacted, because they say one car, for every car taken off the road because it's shared, takes 14 cars off the road, period, because most cars are driven about 5% of their life when you look at how much you drive it as compared to owning it for 24 hours in a day. And it's ride sharing, the Uber, as these big companies get into ride sharing and automated vehicles in the next 10 years, that could have an impact on your company. So you're just going to want to pay attention to those trends, because you don't want to wake up 10 years from now and wonder, why are sales down 30 to 40%? Because we've had a shift in how consumers do things and how things are made. But one of the things I wanted to kind of end on, guys, is when you look at all these specs, when you look at the changes in emerging technologies, is there anything that you feel from a heat treater or for Bob, the consultant standpoint, that everyone on this call should be keeping in mind and thinking through as they prepare? Because we're about to hit the 2020s. Should be a great decade, but what do you think heat treaters should be thinking through in their operations or their quality departments when all these changes are going on, to be the best company they can be in terms of quality and productivity?
Well, from my standpoint, the one thing I will say about the 3D printing side of it, one part, 2 parts, 3 parts, the amount of product is going to be smaller for a heat treater, but you're still going to have to carburize, nitrite, do all the processes. But what's going to happen is you're going to see more smaller batches coming than in the past, because what's going to happen now is auditors are going to be happy because they don't have to have a big inventory of the product. All right. The customer is going to be happy because now they're not going to have to wait 8 to 12 months to get a part when they can get it probably in 2 months. All right.
Right.
So the volume of flow is going to change, not so much the large quantity, but it's going to be a consistent flow of product moving.
Well, that speaks to a big thing that's going on in retail right now: print on demand and customization. People are not wanting a stock product. They're wanting a car with a specific color, specific design, specific stuff. And now models are coming out, business models that are allowing customers to get something manufactured on demand with all the customization they want. And that's just going to feed its way up into the manufacturing process, like you said as well. So Bob, Ed, anything on that notion, looking at the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the future, it's pointing us more towards, more automation in our processes and better computerized controls, digital data collection, so that you can recapture and everything that transpired during your heat treat processing, in order to make sure that you can show your customer that they got exactly what they had asked for.
Right.
I think that's what heat treaters need to be looking at for our future, and technology and heat treating equipment that's going to bring us to those levels.
Well, I know back in the 80s they had turnkey manufacturing. It wouldn't be surprised if you see some heat treaters begin to invest in turnkey 3D printing, where they actually take what you want and they assume some of that risk, but some people are going to make the leap to actually be the 3D printer and do the heat treating and everything and give the company back a part. So that's something for you to be thinking as you're listening out there in your business models. Do you want to take the step and do the 3D printing for our customer? Because they're going to do it one way or the other if they're getting into it, which is why you want to ask the question. But gentlemen, any final comments before we end today's program?
No, I think we hit all the nails.
Awesome. Well, what I will end on is, members, February 18th to the 20th, if you're in Nadcap or want to be at that meeting, you need to come get our RSVP, register up. It's going to be highly informative. One of the things Nadcap does not do, and they reinforced it at the last meeting, they don't talk about the technical aspects of complying with the audits. That is what we're going to put a lot of time into in that 90 minutes. So you're going to want to be there if someone's on site. So make sure you see those. And then we're just looking forward to serving you. And remember, you're not strong, you're MTI strong. I'm Tom Morrison. Thanks, Ed, Bob, and Robert for all your time. And thank you out there, members, for your time as well. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care, all.